So in this video I'm going to be breaking down some of the arguments for Ten Hag and against the likes of McKenna and Zerbi that I think are pretty inconsistent, so just watch the video throughout the whole thing and then let me know in the comment section whether you agree. But before I get into that, if you like me are excited for the upcoming Euros, check out Jersey Thief. They've got all the Euro 2024 jerseys as well as the retro jerseys both from club and international sides as well. If you use code Atlantis at checkout you'll get a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. What I do find funny is the inconsistency in regards to the discussion around the Manchester United manager job. People will say that Ten Hag shouldn't be sacked because he needs more time, but then they'll go and say they don't want Thomas Tuchel or Julian Nagelsmann because they were sacked by Bayern Munich and Chelsea, which I think everyone would agree is a lot harsher than sacking Ten Hag at this point in time. People will also say that Ten Hag is good enough for United, and it's just injuries that are the main reason as to why United have looked like a mid-table side for pretty much the whole season, but will then say that Zerbi and Brighton have been exposed, and this shows that he isn't good enough for United despite Brighton with a mid-table injury-hit squad being mid-table, finishing 11th, 12 points behind Manchester United in 8th, and if you think yeah but it's 12 points, it's Brighton and Manchester United. Brighton also have an XG around the same as United despite having Matoma and Enciso injured for most of the season, a higher X points value and a much lower XG against. If you want to defend Ten Hag that's fine, but you have to remain consistent with your argument when it comes to evaluating other managers like Tuchel, Zerbi and Nagelsmann. But another thing that I find completely perplexing is when people use Arteta as a reason why Ten Hag needs to be given time. However, when you then suggest managers like Zerbi or Zerbi McKenna, the same people will straight away say, well what have they won? They haven't achieved anything at the highest level. Neither had Arteta. He hadn't even managed a team before Arsenal. Pep only managed Barcelona's B team before he took the main job in 2008. Ruben Amorim had only been a manager for around a year and a half at 3rd Division Casapia and Braga's B team and first team for 3 months before taking over at Sporting, where he'd eventually win the league in 2021 and this season as well. Mourinho wasn't a household name before he was appointed Porto manager in 2002. Ancelotti was sacked by both Parma and Juventus before being hugely successful at AC Milan in the early to mid 2000s. The list goes on. Klopp and Tuchel at Mainz, Conte and Simeone before Juventus and Atletico Madrid, Inzaghi at Lazio. The point is, those that simply look at a manager's Wikipedia page and ask what have they won are simply doing so that they don't have to actually analyse how good their tactical setups actually are and their actual qualities as a manager. It's just lazy analysis. To be honest, I don't know why people just don't say, look, I don't watch Zerbi's Brighton or McKenna's Ipswich, so I don't really know how good as managers they are. Simply typing in Brighton results or scanning through a manager's Wikipedia not only completely ignores context behind a team's results, but also completely disregards tactical setup and whether that particular tactical system would be more effective with better players at a top side like Manchester United. For example, David Moyes may be able to get Brighton or Ipswich to a higher position in the Premier League than either Zerbi or McKenna because he uses a more pragmatic system. However, that doesn't mean that he'd do a better job at Manchester United than either of those two. If you give Pep Guardiola Sam Allardyce's mid-2000s Bolton side or Tony Pulis's Stoke, he probably doesn't finish higher than those two managers, but that doesn't mean that those two are better managers than he is. What makes an elite level manager, or should I say an elite level tactician, is how his tactical ideas and setup would translate to an elite level team, with Champions League level players. And for me, if you watch Ipswich and Brighton regularly, not only can you see how innovative and creative both managers' ideas are, but also how with better individual players, their systems would become even more effective. Personally, I would prefer someone like Zerbi McKenna to Thomas Tuchel. Manchester United shouldn't be looking at who the better manager was over the past 5 years, but who will be the better manager for Manchester United specifically over the next 5 years. If you want to win the league and challenge for the Champions League, you're going to have to take risks at some point. You can't just keep sitting on the fence, not wanting to sack a manager and actually make a big decision because of some nonsense about a cycle. We are categorically not winning the Champions League or Premier League with Ten Hag, and I can't see us even getting to a point of being able to challenge for either. And so before we even start talking about the signing of new players, we need to be thinking about the appointment of a new manager. Manchester United need a director of football who isn't going to sit and wait for the ship to completely sink before deciding to sack the manager. Anyone could do that. Everyone knew it was time for Ole and Mourinho to go, and even then it probably took a few weeks extra for them to actually get sacked. What a director of football needs to do is anticipate what's going to happen before it does, and even if the decision is unpopular, they still need to believe in their ability to see what the rest of the fan base can't. A perfect example of this was Roman Abramovich. Back in the 2010s, Abramovich would be constantly criticised for sacking managers prematurely, aka before the fan base thought they should be fired. But ultimately, if you actually look at when Chelsea won the Champions League, it came from 2 seasons where they had sacked their manager prematurely midway through the season, first with Andre Villas-Boas getting sacked and replaced by Roberto Di Matteo, and then Lampard getting fired and replaced by Thomas Tuchel. United, on the other hand, despite people pushing the narrative around United's cycle of not giving managers enough time, have in fact given managers too much time. United wait until it's completely evident that the manager isn't good enough before firing them. Louis van Gaal should have been sacked midway through the 2015-2016 season because we were absolutely dreadful. He wasn't, and it cost us a Champions League the next year after we finished 5th. Moyes was only sacked by United when we mathematically couldn't get Champions League. Like, surely you should be sacking a manager before it gets to that point, so you can then actually recover and get Champions League. That would make more sense to me. Oli as well, I think he should have been replaced in the summer of 2021. Yes, it would have been harsh as we had finished 2nd, but it was evident that tactically we weren't going to be able to compete with Pep's City and Klopp's Liverpool when they returned to their usual level. It would have been unpopular amongst the fan base, but in reality, in hindsight should I say, that was the opportunity that United had to go on and challenge City. But all this nonsense around trusting the process, blah blah blah, actually cost United in hindsight, because we've never been close to challenging City since. And a top level director of football would have looked at that situation, made the big decision to replace Solskjaer and not listen to the fan base. And technically, I guess you could say that Solskjaer didn't deserve to be sacked, but the next season we completely fell apart, wasted another season, but also wasted Cristiano Ronaldo's first season back, ultimately was set back another season after failing to qualify for the Champions League, and we've done exactly the same again this season. It's nothing to do with a process, I think people just regurgitate things they've heard online. Dan Ashworth and the United backroom staff have to make big decisions. They need to first look at Ten Hag and judge not whether he deserves to be sacked, but whether he's a man to win us a title. This isn't a council job, you don't just wait for a fireable offence to let someone go. As soon as Ashworth and the board think that Ten Hag isn't the man to win us a Premier League, then it's at that point he should be allowed to leave. We absolutely categorically cannot waste another season. Managers like Zerbi and McKenna have not been given the opportunity to manage a top level team, so questioning what they've won in football is pretty pointless considering that both have done a fantastic job at their respective clubs. It's laughable that people will say that Zerbi hasn't done well this season in an attempt to defend Ten Hag, despite Brighton, who ranked 14th in the Premier League in terms of wage budgets, finishing 11th after losing their 2 best central midfielders in McAllister and Caicedo in the summer, and having 2 of their key attackers in Matoma and Enciso out for pretty much the whole season. Where should Brighton be finishing seriously? West Ham have a significantly better squad, higher wage budget, and spend more in the transfer window. Maybe Palace, but that's only because of their resurgence under Glasner, which itself shows how a new manager can completely change everything. People want us to believe that Ten Hag needs 10 new players to have any sort of improvement. Meanwhile, managers like Glasner can walk into a lower end Premier League club mid-season and instill a completely new system, style and overall way of playing, and I think either De Zerbi or McKenna could do that at Manchester United. People pretend that there aren't any good managers around and so that's why we should just stick with Ten Hag, when in reality it's just that they don't know any of the good managers around because they simply judge managers on their Wikipedia page rather than actually watching their systems and style of plays and trying to think about how that would actually translate to United and this particular squad. And so for me, Roberto De Zerbi and Kieran McKenna would be my top 2 candidates to replace Ten Hag. I think with this current United squad, both managers instantly make us better, which to be fair isn't that hard at the moment. But further down the line, I think if we are trying to gauge who are the most promising young managers around, then I think De Zerbi and McKenna at the very least have to be in that discussion.